So this is the Shadow Systems MR920 War Poet Edition. This gun makes me want to quit YouTube. The reason that this makes me want to quit YouTube, this sets a whole new standard that I think will be very difficult for anyone else to beat. And why do I say that? If you remember in our last video, we did the video on the Palmetto State Armory Dagger. In that video, I said this is the cheapest Glock clone. And what makes having a $300 Glock clone that's compatible with Glock parts so amazing is you can upgrade these to the hilt for cheaper than you can an OEM Glock. However, I would argue part for part, this one is far cheaper than this one. So I put together a couple of different lists for like comparison's sakes, and I just took average prices of things on what it would take to build this up to be as close to this as possible in regards to specs and things like that. And I will throw that little list up on the screen. Like I didn't take the highest price of things and I didn't take the lowest price of things that you could put on something like this to make it as close as possible. And if they didn't have those parts, I sought aftermarket solutions and I tried to take the average price of those. So if you were going to try to build this guy up to be as comparable as possible, well, one thing you can't do is they don't have any magwells available for this, but I pretended as if you could put a magwell on it, just for comparison's sake. Everything was going well until it came down to the slide. You see, this comes with a modular optics slide, and there's only 2 aftermarket modular optics slides that I'm aware of. If you are aware of others, please put them down in the comments because maybe I just overlooked them and I didn't mean to. The most comparable aftermarket slide that I could find is one like this. This is the Agency Arms Syndicate slide, and it has a modular optics system. The cons to this slide is for the slide, it's gonna cost you $500-ish. It doesn't come with the optics plates. So if you wanted to get 4 optics plates, they're $65 each. So when you add up the cost of having upgraded internals that are comparable to this, upgraded sights, magwells, upgraded triggers, extended mag releases, and that slide, and then you add a Holosun red dot, you come out to $2,034. Now, there is another option for a slide that's available, and it's a little bit cheaper, which is the Grey Ghost Precision V2 slide that has what's called dual optics. And it only works with Leopold footprints and Trijicon footprints. So the Holosun would work on it. And I couldn't find out any information if there's additional plates to buy or not, but that slide cost $418.95. So if you took this gun, upgraded all the internals, the triggers, everything to be as close to this as possible, added the red dot, added the Grey Ghost slide, you still come out to $1,692. So then I got to wondering, I was like, I wonder if it would be cheaper to build it as a Polymer 80. And so I put together a price list for Polymer 80. I took the average price of the Polymer 80 frames because some places you can get them for as little as $95. Some places they're full price for $149. Just a heads up, guys, for anything in this video that you see and you want to check out, I will have links for everything, lights, red dots, all that stuff, and I'll do my very best to find affordable prices as well as promo codes. And that is 99% of the way that this channel is supported is when you guys click links and buy stuff. You don't even have to buy the things that I link to. You can just click the link and buy anything on the website. They give us a small percentage of the sale, and that's how we keep making videos. So that link will be the first link in the description, and I will also pin that link in the comments section. So when it comes to the Polymer 80, I just did the same exact thing, except I replaced the PSA Dagger with the average price of a Polymer 80 frame, and then I added the cost of a frame's parts kit. With the Agency Arms slide and with the Holosun, it still comes out to $1,958.49 to build. Now, if we went with the Grey Ghost slide, $1,617.44 to build. Now, I already know what you're thinking. You're probably like, bro, who cares? I would just buy another slide, have it milled for the red dot, because milled red dots are typically anchored to the slide much more securely than a modular optics because they use mounting plate. You are right, but in this case you're wrong because although this is modular optics, there are no mounting plates. It has a proprietary system, which we're gonna cover in detail here in a minute because it's actually kind of insane. But let's pretend that you could build a Polymer 80 or could build the Palmetto State Armory for the exact same price. You'd still come up short because you'd be missing 2 proprietary features that are on these that aren't available on the Polymer 80, nor are they available on the Palmetto State Armory Dagger. But before we get into what those are, let's talk about the different configurations that the Shadow System line of pistols are. That way you know what exactly is available, because if you don't, it looks kind of confusing at first. Shadow Systems has two types of pistols that they sell: the MR920, which is the Glock 19 size pistol, and the DR920, which is the Glock 17 size pistol. Within those two sizes, there are two different lines. There's the Combat and the Elite. Before we get into the differences, let's talk about what's the same between the Combat and the Elite. With both the Combat and the Elite, you can choose black or titanium nitrided barrels, and you can choose threaded or non-threaded barrels. You can get the guns in either black or flat dark earth. And when the flat dark earth, it means the slide, the frame, everything's flat dark earth. So depends on what you like. They come with the same exact flat trigger. They come with the same interchangeable back straps. They come with the same mag well. They come with the same extended mag release. And they come with the same sights. Now these sights are actually quite nice. I really like them, and I never thought about getting them, but now that I have them, I'm like, wow, I should have did this before. They have green tritium front night sight and a serrated black rear sight. And what's cool about having the green in the front is you don't get confused on what your red dot is and where your front sight is. And I thought that was pretty cool. Now, when you move from the Combat up to the Elite, you get a couple of different things. First thing is you get serrations on the top of the slide. I guess it aids in doing press checks and stuff like that. It's kind of up to you and personal preference. Also on the Elite, you get window cuts on the side. And on the Elites, they come standard with their modular optics system that is completely proprietary, that nobody's ever done before. Now the Combats start around $800-ish, and it kind of depends on what options and upgrades you get. So I mean, if you get a threaded barrel, it's going to cost a little bit more. And they have an optional optics ready version. It doesn't come with it standard, and that's going to cost you a little bit more. But by the time you add those two upgrades, you might as well just buy the Elite. So what's different about the War Poet Edition versus the standard Elite? Well, in the War Poet Edition, it comes in one color. You get to choose one barrel color, one slide color, one frame color. It all just comes in black. And to me, that's fine. I know that John built this to be like a duty self-defense weapon, and he just figured, hey, why would we add all the extra cost for titanium nitride and Cerakote and stuff? And I would agree with him on that for a combat style gun. The serrations on the War Poet are completely different than on the MR920 Elite. And this one is available as the Glock 19 size, and they also have the DR920 Glock 17 full size. So the side serrations here are different, the windows are different, things like that. There's a tiny little bit of branding that says War Poet on it, on the barrel. There's a little bit on the side of the slide, and you get a red trigger safety as opposed to the standard black. But what else is cool about the War Poet Edition versus, say, the MR920 Elite is this one you can get with the Holosun 507C X2 already pre-installed. And when you buy it that way, it allows you to get the Holosun for about $80 cheaper than if you went out and bought it. Now, but they do offer it without it, just in case you already have a red dot laying around that you want to throw on it, or if you want to throw a different red dot on it. So there's no other red dots that you can get included with it aside from the 507C, but altogether on the high side of the pricing, this gun costs $1,259. That's freaking crazy. When I saw that, and when I got this in my hand, I was just like, are you freaking kidding me right now? I just was blown away on how they did it for that price. That's why earlier in the video, I said it makes me want to quit YouTube, because there's no way I can do a build to beat that price that makes it comparable. Now the standard MR920 and DR920s, none of them are bundled with red dots. It's only the War Poets. So if you bought one of those, like say you bought an MR920 Elite, and then you bought a Holosun 507C, which the cheapest price I can find right now is like $290. It would still cost you $30 more to get the MR920 Elite at a red dot than it would to just buy it bundled. I will say this, John made it very difficult for you to find a better deal. One of the hardest things ever. So what comes in the box? You're greeted by a couple of different things. You get this weird little plug looking thing, which we'll talk about in a second. And then you get all these different adapters. And this will work with any red dot that you can fit onto a pistol. So that works nicely, but they're really weird because you'll notice they're not plates, they're spacers. We'll talk about that in a second. Get an instruction manual, and then you get a pistol bag. Now in the pistol bag, it's actually a decent pistol bag. I was really impressed with it because you get the gun itself, right? But then it also has 5 little slots for spare magazines. In this pocket here, you got all kinds of cool goodies. You do get 2 magazines, and they are both Magpul PMags. You get a lock, and you get some interesting back straps. And in here, you also get this cool little tool to take down the pins on the gun, and that helps you change your back straps and your mag well. Also included in the box, I just don't know where I set it, is you get all the parts that come with the Holosun 507C. So you know how whenever you get a red dot, has all the Picatinny mounts and all the cool little like screws and stuff. Those are still included in another bag. I just don't know where I put it. This is how the gun comes out of the box. Red dot's already pre-installed. However, the mag well wasn't pre-installed, and it took me a minute on how to figure out how to install the mag well because it's a little bit different than others, and I'll show you that in a sec. Here are the front sights. You get a photoluminescent yellowish green front sight with tritium in the front, and then in the rear you get serrated blacked out sights. What's interesting about these sights is they're not quite suppressor height, but they're also not quite low profile. It's a very interesting height that I've never really seen before, because usually if you throw suppressor height sights on a gun that uses a red dot and you don't have a red dot on it, it looks kind of funny, right? On here, you do have a nice chamfer that goes along the top edges of the slide, and you got some really good top serrations right here. You also got some really good front serrations up here that are kind of recessed into the slide. It makes it easier to grab onto or press check. You got some tiny little windows, they're not too big. And then you got some rear serrations back here that are easy to pull. I believe that this slide is nitrided. It's definitely not Cerakoted, so it's some kind of nitride coating. And then the grip is also really awesome. You can get really high up and the beaver tail's extended just a little bit so you don't get any slide bite. And then you got this really awesome ledge for indexing on one side and using this as a thumb shelf on the other side for mitigating recoil. The texture on the grip is really good. It's very reminiscent of Polymer 80's aggressive texture that was a Brownells exclusive. Let me see if I can find it. So this one's the aggressive texture that was a Brownells exclusive, and then this is the one for the MR920. Another thing to note about this frame is it's not a Glock frame, nor is it a Polymer 80 frame. It's their own frame. You do get a little rail up here for putting lights, and you got a really good glove bevel that's right here. So if you wear gloves and you're shooting, you can still come from the index position down, and you can tell the inside of the trigger guard is nice and large for gloved hands. You also get a little bit of texturing right here on the front of the trigger guard. Really good texturing on the front strap. Really good texturing everywhere, to be honest. You do have a kind of a double undercut. It's undercutted nice and smooth right here. And then you get a little bump, and then it's recessed up towards the front. So you can get this hand underneath it and get super high in the grip without getting Glock knuckle, and then you can get right up under here, or you can put your finger around there depending on how you shoot. The branding on here is very subtle. You got one little Warrior Poet logo right here. You got a little bit on the side of the barrel. Then you got a little bit on the side over here on this side. And then right here, you just have a Shadow Systems logo. And I like that because it's super tasteful. I can't stand it when people put huge signs on their guns. This is based off the Gen 4 platform. So you get a nice large mag release that's easier to grab than the Gen 3s. And it is upgraded. It is made of plastic. It's not made of CNC or anything. Another interesting thing is you do get a stainless steel guide rod, and you can actually take the tip of this off and change out the springs if your spring ever wears out, and the barrel is also fluted and threaded. The trigger feels pretty nice. Let me show you real fast. So there's your wall, break, reset, break, reset, break. The reset's really good. It really pushes your finger back out. The trigger isn't super light, nor is it super heavy. And I'm assuming they did that because John Lovell is obviously interested in self-defense, and he probably wanted it to be as safe as possible. So let's do a little trigger test here. I don't help these triggers. I just have to place my finger here because this thing moves. Okay, so that one pulled right at 4 pounds. We'll do one more. And then that one pulled right at 4 pounds as well. Cool. What's interesting is this trigger was a little bit stiff when I first grabbed it and started dry firing it. After 1 or 2 range trips of just a couple hundred rounds each, it was able to break in really nicely, smooth out, and not be as stiff. Now, before I show you how this crazy system here works for the red dot, let me show you interesting things about this mag well. Now, one thing I did notice out of the box, especially because I'm reviewing this like so soon after I did the PSA Dagger, I don't know if you guys remember, but when we reviewed the Dagger, one of the biggest cons I had about this was how hard these pins are to push out. I mean, you can go watch the video if you didn't already see it later after this video, but I needed like a really good hammer, really good punch. I needed a concrete floor to get them out. And then that allows your back strap to come off. And you have all these other interesting shapes of back straps that you can put on here. I was texting John asking him about these, and he said, and these are his words, not mine, he said he wanted this grip to please everybody. And what he meant by that is some people don't like factory Glock grip. So he said, we created these angles so that no matter if you're coming from a Sig Sauer P320 or if you're coming from an MMP or what have you, there's a grip angle that you'll like. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So they slide off super easily, but let me just show you this silhouette. And then if I put on this larger one, look how much that changes. Like, it really adds a flare to the back. And then if I take that one off, you can put the smallest one on there, and now it's even slimmer. I found that the one that's right here in the middle has been the best for me. So earlier when we opened this box, I showed you this little interesting piece right here that looks like a lanyard loop. So if you're not running a magwell, you'll use this one. If you are running a magwell, you're gonna use this one. And like I mentioned, when you open up the box, the magwell is not installed. So let's talk about this modular optic system, and I'm gonna explain it to you without taking it apart. It mounts directly to the slide. The only difference between the different optics is the spacer in the back. And this spacer in the back, here's a different spacer for you, and this will explain it. You see these two little, they're like two little ledges. I'm seeing if I can get it on camera good, but they're two little ledges that kind of project out to the side. And at the base of this dovetail on the rear, there's two little grooves down here at the back of the dovetail, and they push into there. These are made of plastic, and the reason that they said they made these out of plastic is because no matter what you do in manufacturing, there's always gonna be a slight variance in tolerances of sizes of things, whether that be the slide cuts or whether that be the optic. And I'm gonna see if I can find a photo of this removed, because I don't wanna remove it because it's really in there. But it allows for a little bit of compression so that this stays in there nice and snug. Now, I don't know how well these are gonna hold up over time. However, I do know this. Interesting thing about Shadow Systems, as well as the PSA Dagger, I gotta give them props on this, is any replacement part that you want, they sell it on their website, and everything down to these little guys. You can even buy those little lanyard loops. I almost lost one. It flew across the room somehow. I was just gonna go to their website and buy one. It was like $3, but thankfully I found it and didn't have to order it. Although that's cool that they're not using a plate because it gives it a more secure footprint, they did something even crazier. And to understand it, I need to show you the original way that we install optic cuts and stuff. So this is really old. This is before the days where people put these little notches on here, reducing the stress on the screws. But you'll notice on this side, you can see this little piece of metal down there. And that is your extractor plunger. You know, there's a plunger rod and spring that run lengthwise right here. You can see the other tip right here, and that's how your extractor works. Well, with red dots, you've always had to do a really long screw on the left side and then a really short screw on the right side so you didn't hit that plunger. Shadow Systems didn't like that. So what they did, they came out with a proprietary shortened safety plunger. And the way that you get this plunger out is by taking the red dot off. It's kind of fascinating. Even like right here, when you go to take this off, you'll notice the hole for the plunger is still there. So you can drop it down in there, but it doesn't come out right here. It also makes putting your gun back together so much easier, doing it just your fingers. You'll notice these two little circles right here. Those are the screws that come from the top to hold your optic in place. You know, so back in the day, talking about these shortened screws, that's why you always had to put so much Loctite on them, because with this one being short, when this thing cycles over and over again, it would vibrate them loose, and sometimes you'd lose your red dot, it'd fly off while you're shooting it. But with this one, that doesn't happen. You get the really long screws that go all the way through the slide, really giving us probably the most secure mount that I've ever seen in my life. And the other cool thing about having these little spacers back here versus an optics plate is they're dirt freaking cheap to replace. In case you lose them, they're only 99 cents each. Also in the bag that has all these spacers in there is all the different length screws you would need for the different types of red dots that you might run on here. So earlier in the video when I said even if you could build a Polymer 80 or a PSA Dagger for the same price as this, you'd still be missing two features. One of them is the modular optics that we just brought up. Pretty crazy, right? And then the second one is interchangeable back straps. And so with that said, let's talk about how this thing actually performed at the gun range. First shots with the Shadow Systems MR920 War Poet Edition. So I just aimed at the center of this target. Not too bad. First time shooting the gun. It's about 40 feet away from the target. Obviously, first time shooting the gun, got to get used to it, but not too shabby. So I put about 300 rounds-ish through here. It didn't really take a whole lot of rounds for me to figure out how much I like it. I had some crappy ammo. Must be this ammo. Had another light primer strike. I actually had one on my CZ earlier. I'm thinking this ammo has hard primers. I had 1,000 rounds of S&B ammo and I was getting light primer strikes. And it wasn't just with this gun. I talked about this in my PSA Dagger video. I also got light primer strikes with the PSA Dagger, as well as my OEM Gen 5 Glock. It's just hard primers. I just got a bad batch. So I switched out ammo, never had another malfunction. I never had any jams. I never had any stovepipes, nothing like that. Now here's what threw me off about the way it feels when I shoot it. So I'm very accustomed to shooting Glocks that have OEM grips. I'm used to shooting Glocks that have stippled grips. I'm used to shooting Polymer 80 frames that have kind of square and blocky grips on both of these. Although I do prefer square blocky grips because they give me better traction. But one thing's for certain, regardless if it's a square blocky grip or if it's a rounded grip like an M&P, I always find myself compensating in some way because, you know, there's no way to make a gun fit everybody's hand 100% perfectly. So, you know, with a Glock, I got like a tweak here at my elbow or something like that. Well, what threw me off with this one, so I chose my back strap by, you know, pressing out, presenting it, and I'd be like, oh, I don't like the way that feels, and I'd change it out, try another one. And when I finally settled on one, I went to the range. And on my first shots, my first couple of shots, like I did not really hit where I wanted to hit at all. And it turned out the reason that I did was because I was so used to my compensations with other grips that this one didn't require them, and those compensations were actually hurting me. And even after I figured it out, it still took me quite a few magazines to get down the recoil mitigation grip that's not modified like it is on other guns. And so if you look at the footage of the video, like you'll see, you're like, wow, dude, your grip kind of sucks. And it's like, no, I'm just readjusting to this one. And once I got it adjusted perfectly, I was able to shoot it just as flat as I shoot other Glocks. The other pro is it fits all of my Glock 19 holsters, and they don't even have to be light bearing holsters. See, I usually carry with a light of some sort, and then usually if I use the light and put it into a holster that might not be the same, like for example with Polymer 80s, if I have a light on them, I can typically fit them into a standard Glock holster or a CZP-10C holster. But with this one, if you took the light off, it's still gonna fit in non-light bearing Glock holsters that are Kydex at least, because that's the only holsters I usually test. So that's a good thing. You don't need a new holster. I will say this, however. So I just got this guy from Tier 1 Concealed. I'll have a link for it over at the build list, but I got this interesting thing called a wedge on the back of it that makes it conceal better. This will fit any gun that has a Surefire X300 on it. Like straight up, it will. This thing even fits my CZ Shadow 2. It also fits my 2011 build. It fits my Polymer 80s. It fits my Glocks. It fits my FN 509s. It fits my MMPs, like literally everything. Whether they have a compensator on them, I just want to give a big shout out to them for letting me test this. I will make a full video about it in the future, but I just wanted to bring it up in this video. If you have Surefire X300s, I'll have a link where you can get these guys for like $90 off as well. But if you like Surefires, then you'll like this holster. But what makes this holster different is it's inside the waistband. See, usually Safariland makes those OWB holsters that are like this, but no one's really done an IWB holster. So good stuff. So let's talk about the pros and the cons of the MR920. Now, this comes to a part of the video where I want to make a little disclaimer. Anytime I've ever gotten a product that I am genuinely excited about, people think I'm just shilling for the product. And I guess because I get excited and maybe it seems like I'm trying too hard. But what's weird about that is because I do like these affiliate links, right? Like I can see what parts sell, what parts don't sell. I've noticed when I give things kind of like negative reviews, not like so much it's like stay away from this, but when I list off like a lot of cons, people will buy more of those than they will from a video where I don't have as many cons. And I understand where people are coming from. Like when you're really excited about something, I guess it could on camera appear that you're trying too hard, but this is a gun I'm extremely excited about. And this is a gun that I'm having a difficult time finding a con with. Like I really am. So I've had this gun since July 20th, and it's now August 25th, at least on the day of recording this. I doubt it'll be published for another few days. And with the time I spent with it, I've spent taking it to the range and just looking for something that I could find a flaw with. And it's really hard. They've managed to somehow create a modular optics that doesn't require plates. So now you get the secure fit of having like a custom milled slide. They figured out how to eliminate that stupid issue, like I mentioned earlier, with the plunger spring and having the screws go deep enough. They figured out a way to add regular height sights that you can co-witness with because they can drill further down because they modified it. They have the most perfect grip texture with the perfect accelerator cuts, the mag weld, the perfect double undercut. I mean, everything. Like, and I'm not trying to just sing your praises. Like I want people to understand that. So if I'm forced to come up with cons, here's what it is. I don't like that it comes with PMags. I wish it came with OEM Glock mags. I also understand that this price of the $1,200 and some odd cents is gonna outprice a lot of people. And in that case, I would suggest getting something like a PSA Dagger or even an OEM Glock, or maybe even starting a Polymer 80 build. I have tons of videos on that stuff, and I will put a playlist like right up here for you. But essentially, if it's out of your price range, I get it. So that could be a con to some people. I mean, price is a very relative term. Affordability is a very relative term based on how much money you make and all that good stuff. But like I mentioned earlier, you can't build anything comparable to this for anywhere in the ballpark of this. I don't want to say this, and I don't say this often, but they really changed the game with this gun. And I don't know how the heck they did it, but they pulled it off. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think, guys. Like, I'm just one person. I only have a sample size of one. So that means if you ordered it and it broke, well, I can't control that. I might have a good sample size. Somebody else might have a bad sample size. So watch other people's videos as well. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments section below. Links to the build list for all this cool stuff are down in the description and pinned in the comments. But until next time, guys, I love you, and you guys stay sexy.